late 1950s saw a new surge of life to the Frankenstein monster. In 1957, there was both the craptacular I Was a Teenage Frankenstein and the Hammer classic Curse of Frankenstein. And then in 1958, there was Frankenstein 1970, taking place in the not-so-distant future. Well, supposedly the original title was Frankenstein 1960. It was changed apparently because it didn't sound futuristic enough. 2 years, you think? Doesn't matter anyway. There's nothing in the movie that really reflects 1970. It still looks like the 50s. The opening scene is exactly what you want. It's a monster running around. They really got this one started off fast. Usually they'd spend the first half hour introducing the characters and explaining the monster, but this one cuts the bullshit and then just goes straight for the monster. Oh, they're just making a movie, that old gag. It's a movie about making a movie that makes us wish we were watching that movie instead of this movie. They're making a documentary about the grandson of the infamous Dr. Frankenstein, who happens to be played by Boris Karloff, the man who originally made the monster so famous. Ironic to see him in the opposite role.
Yours is not the brain that I would have chosen, but at least you are obedient.
So this film crew is running around in his own castle, reenacting these scenes from his family's tragic past. Not disrespectful at all.
Now I got the whole thing figured out. Coffins, epitaphs, lightning, thunder, and you down in the vaults giving us the lowdown on your great-great-grandfather, the first Frankenstein, the one who created the monster. You're going to be a television star.
Well, turns out Frankenstein's trying to follow in his grandfather's footsteps to create his own monster. I guess it's just a family tradition at this point. It's like in Son of Frankenstein, except now it would be Son of Frankenstein. He limps around with a scarred face. You'll never guess why. He was tortured by Nazis in World War II. Does that little backstory have any bearing on the plot? Not really. Frankenstein's so poor and washed out, he uses the money that the film crew pays him to buy equipment for his laboratory. Most of the movie is just Karloff tinkering around in his lab, speaking in monologues and talking medical jargon. It's so cliche, it almost comes off as a spoof of the whole Mad Doctor genre. Ed Wood's Bride of the Monster is to Lugosi as Frankenstein 1970 is to Karloff. When the monster's being created, at first he just has a skull face. Eyeballs are surgically planted and they use an actual cow heart. A real heart in a horror movie? For 1958, that was some gruesome stuff. The monster is a disappointment. I'm assuming they didn't have the rights to reproduce the classic Jack Pierce makeup. Universal holds a tight grip over their monster heritage. The opening scene with the fake monster, the camera never tilts up far enough to show his face. On the poster, his back is turned and a silhouette. Clearly they were trying to allude to the classic. The monster in the film never takes off his bandages. Take a look. This is your monster. Looks like a mummy that was wrapped up while wearing a box over his head. The real star is the aging Boris Karloff. I thought he'd only have a few scenes and that his name would be stamped on the poster for marquee value, but he has a great amount of screen time, and surprisingly, with the crappy material he has to work with, he does a really good job. There's a lot of dramatic monologues that go on for a long time without there ever being a cut.
Then he realized what he had created, he must kill. But because he was the creator, he could not bring himself to destroy it.
Since this is a low-budget film, they probably didn't do many takes. That only goes to show what a pro he really was. It seems he has some personal sympathy for the monster and that his career has come full circle. Not to spoil the ending, but since we're on topic, when they uncover the monster's face, it's Karloff. With or without the classic makeup, it idolizes Karloff as the monster for all eternity.
Frankenstein.
But the last time he played the monster was in an episode of Route 66 entitled A Lizard's Leg and an Owlet's Wing, along with Lon Chaney Jr. as the Wolfman and Peter Lorre as, well, Peter Lorre. Karloff plays himself playing the monster and wears the classic makeup for the final time.
The old ghosts are the best after all, and the power of all three of us in one picture. Can you imagine it?
But it's a very casual performance. I think Frankenstein 1970 is his swan song. I mean, as far as Frankenstein goes, his true swan song to the genre itself would be Targets. Imagine if you took everything you love about classic horror films, a castle, a laboratory, a swamp, fog, and Karloff doing what he does best. It lacks story, and it's cliche as hell, but damn is it great.
We can frighten anybody and everybody.